would you trade your life for? That's a question that we don't really want to talk about because it sounds a little bit morbid. What are you willing to trade your life for? But it's a question that we're all going to answer at some point, one way or the other. We do that every day. We do trade our life for something, don't we? And the question is what? And the way that we answer that question makes all the difference in the world. My dad answered that question with money. He decided that he was going to be a millionaire by the time he was 30. He lived in a little town outside of Boise, Idaho. And in the 50s in Boise, Idaho, you just can't be a millionaire. I don't think there was a whole $1 million in the entire state of Idaho at that point. So he picked up my mom and me. I was about 2 years old, and we moved down to Denver. And he started an organization called the Denver Auto Mart. And the Denver Auto Mart was at the time Denver's biggest car dealership. And we did all the fast, fun stuff, the Ferraris and the Corvettes and all of those kind of cool cars. And somebody told my dad one day, they said, you know, if you can make money with cars, you can make money up in the mountains. It was a time when they were selling this little valley down through US 40 for about $125 an acre. We know that now as Vail, Colorado. He bought another piece of property that was called Hideaway Park, and he built a post office there. You had to have a post office because you had to have a zip code. And if you don't have a post office, you don't get a zip code, you can't do a real estate development. And in the middle of all of that, they changed the name of Hideaway Park to Winter Park, and my dad did all of that stuff up there too. He failed in his goal to be a millionaire by the time he was 30. He did it when he was 31. And he did it again and again and again and again. It was a fun time to be a kid in my family because we had cool cars and cool stuff. That Mercedes that you saw on the screen up there, that actually was faster than Corvettes. I remember my dad drag racing a guy down in Hamden one time at the church. The kids are in the back. But we discovered something interesting, my mom and dad. They discovered that you can be rich and not necessarily happy. They discovered that, as Stephen Covey said, they had climbed to the top of the ladder was leaning against the wrong thing. And so they sat my brother and I down at a little birch kitchen table in our house, and they said, boys, we started something called a foundation. And what that effectively means for you is you have no inheritance. When you're in high school, it doesn't matter. When you're in college, it matters a lot. And my dad and mom gave everything away. They gave it to churches and colleges and things like that. And then my dad was left with this funny problem. He had time on his hands and nothing to do except give more stuff away. And he thought, you know, I gave all the stuff, but what I didn't give away was the knowledge to get more stuff. And so he started going to the third world. He went to Zimbabwe first. And then he went to Ecuador and Peru, and he landed in Brazil. And when he was in Brazil, he had an interpreter. He was doing economic consulting, but she was a medical student. She grew up in Chile, and so she spoke Spanish. She lived in Brazil, so she spoke Portuguese. She spoke some English. She was in medical school, and she said, Jim, one of these days I would like to take you to where my mom and I do treatment for the poor people that live in these favelas. About 330,000 people in this little town. And my dad went with her to see this clinic, and it was just this ramshackle old house. The front room was an examination room, and there was a metal table and a box of re-rolled bandages, and the bedroom off to the right had a baby scale and some Walt Disney posters on it. And my dad looked at this guy and he says, I'm not a doctor, I'm a real estate guy, but I don't understand, how can you do medicine like this? And the guy looked at my dad and he said, 3,000% inflation, what am I supposed to do? You're the economist. My dad said, if I could get stuff donated for you, could you get it into the country without getting it dutied or tariffed? And he said, well, aren't you working with the president of the country? Maybe you could do that. So my dad flew back to Brasilia and got an agreement signed with C.U.R.E, with their health, education, welfare, that he could bring the things into the country without getting them taken. And then he got back to Denver and he was telling this story to some friends. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just promised this guy I would help him, and I don't know where I'm going to get more than a Band-Aid. And one of my dad's friends looked at him and he said, you know, Jim, that's an easy problem. My partner Pete and I, we own a medical wholesale company. I'll give you stuff. And they gave my dad $50,000 of brand new medical supplies right off the shelf. My dad drove down there in his old Dodge pickup truck. And he picked the stuff up and he drug it up to Evergreen and he put it in his garage and he'd drive back down. up and down. 30 days, my mom and dad had collected $250,000 medical supplies. My folks wrote that check and they put it in a container. Now, a container is a semi-truck trailer. Sometimes people will ask me, I like this idea. Can I come by and get a couple containers and put them in a Suburban? You put 2.5 Suburbans in a container, 3 feet long. My folks shipped that first container down, and that's how we got started, 1987. And since then, we've worked in 132 countries. Our average client will work 12 hours and make $1. There's 1.2 billion, with a B, billion people in this world today who work at a bucket. And we changed communities all over the world with the help of a lot of people, like the 17,000 volunteers. I told my dad I would help him for 6 months. Been doing this for 17 years now. And we've grown a bit. We've now got warehouses in Denver and Phoenix and Nashville and Houston and Chicago. These are big ones. We got little ones in Ithaca, New York, and Sarasota, Florida, and out in Portland and Grand Rapids and all of these other places. And we're just going and collecting all the stuff that we got access of. Extra needles and syringes, beds. What do you do with an old x-ray machine? And the answer is we throw in the garbage. The stuff that we needed to fix Ebola back in January, February, March, April, May, June, when nobody was paying attention, the stuff we could have stopped that with was stuff that we threw in the United States in the garbage. And there's people all over this world dying for that stuff. So we're just picking it up and moving it. And we've learned a few things along the way. Probably the most important one is this notion that my dad and mom modeled and demonstrated. And that is that people don't work for money. They work for passion and purpose. People don't work for money. They work for passion and purpose. In economics, we call this marginal rate of satiation. Now, all that means is that your first bite of pizza is a lot better than your last bite of pizza. Marginal means it's just that one more, that extra one. Satiation means you're satisfied. If we could draw a little graph, it might look something like this. My daughter Caroline, she's 12 years old, cute little kid. She thinks she's poor. She lives in the United States, she's a rich kid, but she thinks she's poor. So when I give Caroline 20 bucks, she thinks that she's rich. And if you could plot $20 on the bottom, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, and smiles up the side, that first 20 bucks makes her ecstatic. Her little line goes right straight up, right? The second 20 bucks is good, but not quite as good as the first 20. And by the time you get over here, where Donald Trump is getting out of his limousine in Park Avenue South, and there's a $20 bill laying on the ground, he won't even pick it up because it's not worth it. And our curve goes something like this. And what we've bought into in the United States is that we can manipulate people with more money and we can motivate people with more money, and the fact is that at some point that ceases to be a factor. The thing that really motivates us is passion and purpose. Let me illustrate. Let's say somebody comes to you and says, would you like to have a raise? I'm going to give you a raise for $10,000. You in? But wait, let me tell you the rest of this. Here's the deal. You don't get to work, or you don't get a vacation during the holidays because we need you to work then, and you got to move to Cincinnati, Ohio. Not going to happen, right? The government's going to take half of that 10 grand. And you're looking at them saying, are you kidding me? I'm going to ruin my entire life in Denver, Colorado to move to Cincinnati, Ohio for $400 a month? No way, I'm not doing it. We can't motivate people by money, friends. Daniel Pink talked about this in his book, Drive. He said, we motivate people with other stuff. What? Passion and purpose. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine that ran an athletic club. And he had just taken his board and they'd gone off up to the mountains, and I don't know why we ever do retreats in beautiful places like Vail, Colorado. in conference rooms. Stay in Cincinnati. But he just got back, and I was teasing him. I said, so when's the next time you're ever going to actually look at that mission plan and the mission statement? You go back and you stick it in a file drawer, right? And you don't look at it again for 3 years until you get another board, and then you go drag it out and dust it off and say, is this really what we want to do? I said, what was your passion statement? And he said, what do you mean? I said, if you walked in on Friday and you told your whole staff that you were having a hard time making payroll and you weren't going to pay them, how many people show up on Monday? He said, outside of me, probably none. I said, that's because you haven't figured out what makes everybody get out of bed and put their feet on the floor. You haven't figured out what your passion statement is. He said, well, that's easy for you nonprofit people. Kumbaya, right? How would you do that in an athletic club? I said, here's an idea. Let's grab your trainer, one of your best trainers. And let's do this at a quarterly staff meeting where you bring her up in front of everybody else, and then we get Mr. Johnson to bring him up. He's 63 years old, top of his game, kids in college, great family, neat house, good vacations, all of that. Bad physical. Doctor says you're pretty well blocked. We can do a little stint in there, but the next time I see you, unless you change your lifestyle, you're coming into my office horizontal and things don't go well for you the next time. And then let Mr. Johnson stand in front of your entire staff and talk about that trainer and how she would call at 5 o'clock in the morning on days like today when it's snowing and say, hey, get out of bed and get down here because we got an appointment. And let that trainer, or Mr. Johnson, talk about how that trainer changed his life. He lost 15 pounds. His numbers are right. You just added 20 years onto this guy's life. Do you think that trainer is motivated to show up Monday? Because why? Because it's passion and purpose. Right? Southwest Airlines gets this. And I talk about this even when you're not here. Southwest Airlines, what's their purpose? Their purpose is to get people together, right? Everybody else wants to make stockholders happy. These guys figured out that you only get on an airplane because you want to go see somebody that matters to you. It's about Thanksgiving. It's about a job interview. It's about something else. Is it any wonder why these guys consistently outperform everybody else? Because it's about passion and purpose. Amazing. I would submit to you something today. If you are an employer and you haven't figured out the passion and purpose question, it's time to do that now. If you can't tell your people the why, that's your job over Thanksgiving break. Figure it out. Because they're not going to come to work for you if you don't understand that. I've got 17,000 people who show up in our warehouse on days like today when there's no heat. They go all over the world on their own dime because they believe in the purpose. Because they know that whenever they pack up a box of medical supplies, it's going to change the life of somebody on the other end. Because they know that there's some doctor over there that really needs to do surgery, but they don't have suture, and they can fix that. My job has changed. I became the chief storytelling officer of our organization. Why? Don't get me wrong, people don't do things if they don't get paid. They just don't have to get paid money. They don't have to get paid with this stuff that doesn't work after a while. Daniel P. They get paid in this knowledge that what they do matters. Seth Godin talks about that all the time. Do something that matters. And if you've got a whole team of people around you that do things that matter, it's your job as the executive to tell them, why does this matter to you? Why does this matter to me? Because I can bring people together at Thanksgiving, and that's what I'm going to do. I had lunch with David E. Bell the other day. He's on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. This guy lives his life in passion for the law. And he's the best lawyer there is. He's the best judge on the 10th Circuit Court. Because why? Because he really, really, really wants to do it. Passion is what rounded off the edges of our iPhones, because some guy out there in California decided that we should put our entire record collection on our telephone. Why? Because he wanted to do it. If you are passionate and you have a whole group of people who really understand the purpose, you can do some amazing things. I was at DU earlier today and I was telling a group of MBA students, do not sign on to a job that you are not passionate about. Not a good idea. Don't do it. Because you will never be really good at it. And if you're working in a place that you're not passionate about, quit. Go find something else to do. Because you will never be great if you don't have passion. It's a scary thing for employers, right? Because we think that we can manipulate and motivate people by giving them a bit more money, and I can fire your passion, and you can't do it. But we can do it the other way. I got to thinking about this with fast food. That was a stumbling block for me on this whole theory, right? What about burritos? At the DNC, they had, at the Clinton Global Initiative, CGI, that was just in town, they had the guy from Chipotle, and he answered my question. He said, you know what? Our goal is to find people with character, and we can teach them how to do burritos. I don't care if they went to high school, I don't care if they went to college, it doesn't really matter. But if they got character, if they work hard and they're honest people and I really like them, then I'm going to put them from the burrito bar to the executive suite and watch what happens. He said that out of the last 5 people that we promoted to the executive suite, 4 of them started on the backside of the burrito bar. And those guys are all up there looking for the next young man or woman just like them that needs another shot. He said burritos are the means to the end, not the end in and of itself. It's about getting those kids an opportunity to be just like us. That, my friends, is passion. It's burritos. It's passion. I got to thinking about this the other day. And I got to thinking about this notion of what if you had a whole nation, for the first time in the history of ever, that had the option of doing something because they wanted to. My granddad didn't have that option. My great-grandfather was a rancher, so my grandfather was a rancher too. You took over the family farm because if you didn't have a job. So Grandpa got up at 5:30 every morning and he went and took care of the cows because that's what his dad did. He didn't get the option to say, you know what, I think I'd rather be an engineer. I love art. I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to go to law school. Grandpa milked cows. He took care of sheep. That's what he did. If you're a student in the 8th grade in France today, you take a test. And that test determines whether you go technical or you go university. You don't get the option. I was in Pyongyang, North Korea. Kim Jong-un tells you get to plant rice, or you get to fix Jeeps, or you get to pump gas. And it doesn't matter what you want to do. You get told. How lucky are we? In this country, we get to pick. We get to decide what fires our passion, and we get to do that stuff. What if you had a whole nation for the first time in the history of the entire world that everybody got to pursue their passion? That's us now. Doesn't happen anywhere else. Did not happen 50 years ago. But we get that option. We get that option. Thanks for doing this today. I just encourage you to find that road of passion and purpose. God bless.